What happens when rock's most fearless visionary decides your ideas are dragging his music back to earth? Peter Gabriel, mastermind behind Genesis's surreal stage shows and solo hits like Sledgehammer, has spent 50 years chasing sonic frontiers. But that altitude came at a price. Anyone who clipped his wings became an instant rival. Tonight, at 75, Gabriel finally names the six forces: bandmates, label bosses, and legendary icons he fought hardest to escape. Some were brothers in Prague, others were titans in their own right. All collided with the same immovable rule. Peter's art comes first, careers and friendships second. Ready to see who got grounded? Let's start with the keyboard prodigy, whose classical ego nearly smothered Gabriel's theater rock dreams. Tony Banks. When classical theory met costumed chaos. In early 70s Genesis rehearsals, you could chart tension just by watching the keyboard rig expand. Tony Banks arrived with Bach-schooled fingers and a growing wall of mellotrons. Peter Gabriel showed up in a fox head and a crimson dress, pitching a song cycle about a Puerto Rican street kid wandering New York's underworld. Their shared mission, progressive rock without limits, quickly forked into two visions. Banks wanted symphonic architecture, Gabriel wanted surreal theater. During the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway sessions, that split became audible. Gabriel asked for atmospheric space so his narrative could breathe. Banks counter-argued that every blank bar was a missed harmonic opportunity. One evening at Headley Grange, an engineer recalls Peter sketching stage prop ideas while Tony layered yet another keyboard line. Gabriel finally snapped, "We're writing dreams, not fugues." Banks fired back that dreams still need harmony. The clash escalated into fader wars, Gabriel pushing vocals and effects up, Banks nudging them down with organ swells. Even rehearsals turned into silent standoffs. Peter workshopping costume changes stage left, Tony rehearsing 7/8 arpeggio stage right, neither yielding volume. Roadies say Phil Collins often diffused fights with jokes, but during mixing, Collins found entire keyboard tracks muted by Gabriel after hours. Tony reinserted them before dawn. That tug-of-war exhausted everyone, but clarified one fact for Peter. As long as Banks steered the musical core, Gabriel's visual storytelling would stay caged. 6 months after the tour, he walked away from Genesis, telling friends, "You can't soar in somebody else's score." Banks never forgave the departure. Gabriel never forgot the restraint. Their handshake at the 2010 Hall of Fame induction lasted 3 seconds, long enough to honor history, not long enough to rewrite it. If Tony's classical fortress hemmed Gabriel in, the next bandmate built barbed wire guitar riffs around commercial radio, and Peter saw it as betrayal. Mike Rutherford. Riffs aimed at radio, not revelation. With Gabriel gone, Genesis leaned on Mike Rutherford's chugging 12-string and arena-ready hooks. But the friction started years earlier, when Peter was still dreaming in masks and Mike was quietly tallying FM spin potential. During Foxtrot pre-production, Rutherford campaigned for tighter runtimes so DJs wouldn't fade their epics mid-solo. Gabriel countered by adding spoken-word interludes about apocalyptic fox hunts. Band meetings turned into polite knife fights. Peter arguing stories must sprawl, Mike insisting listeners' attention spans don't. Song credit sheets grew red-inked. Gabriel's lyrical concepts filled pages, yet royalty splits favored the chord builders, Rutherford chief among them. One dispute over Watcher of the Skies ended with Mike slamming a notebook shut, snapping, "Try staging that in 4 minutes." Peter retorted, "Try feeling anything in 4." The gulf widened on Selling England by the Pound. Rutherford's crisp guitar lines on I Know What I Like flirted with pop. Gabriel demanded extra flute breaks and a lawnmower prop. Mike saw radio gold. Peter saw thematic dilution. The final fracture came when Rutherford floated a pared-down, guitar-driven future for Genesis. Fewer costumes, cleaner hooks, bigger crowds. Gabriel read it as a manifesto for mediocrity. He confided to a tour manager, "Mike wants a career, I want a crusade." After Peter's exit, Rutherford indeed steered Genesis toward chart-topping singles, then launched Mike plus the Mechanics, scoring glossy power ballad hits. Interviewers asked Gabriel about those songs. He quipped, "Nice for the mall." Rutherford shot back in his memoir. Some people confuse accessibility with compromise. They now exchange cordial emails about charity gigs, but the core split remains. Rutherford believes great art should meet the listener halfway. Gabriel believes great art builds a whole new road and dares you to follow. Yet industry suits posed an even bigger obstacle, because you can't negotiate vision with executives who read spreadsheets, not spirit. Record label executives. Spreadsheets versus spirit. Peter Gabriel left one set of gatekeepers in Genesis, only to slam into another. The men in tailored suits who thought hit singles grew best under fluorescent boardroom lights. During his solo debut, the eponymous 1977 Car album, A&R reps at Charisma asked for a lead single like Salisbury Hill on every record. Gabriel nodded politely, then followed with Exposure, a fractured art rock mantra produced by Robert Fripp. The label panicked. No obvious chorus, no radio mix. Gabriel's reply? Market complexity. Translation: I'm not trimming the edges so you can file quarterly reports. Negotiations soon resembled hostage talks. For Peter Gabriel III, aka Melt, he banned cymbals to create that claustrophobic drum sound Phil Collins would later borrow for In the Air Tonight. Atlantic Records executives previewed the tracks and declared them career suicide. Gabriel pulled the nuclear option, walked out mid-meeting, masters in hand, and shopped the album elsewhere. It ultimately went platinum in the UK and spawned Games Without Frontiers. He'd rather gamble on new distribution than dilute the sonic experiment. The standoffs peaked in 1986 with So. Gabriel wanted Youssou N'Dour's unfiltered Wolof vocals on In Your Eyes. The label pushed for an English-only edit, fearing US listeners would change the station. Gabriel threatened to withhold the entire record. The suits folded. The song became a timeless soundtrack moment, Say Anything boombox scene, and turned Youssou into a global name, Gabriel's proof that vision beats market research. Even into the 2000s, the war continues. Gabriel delayed the physical release of his upcoming album I.O. until the label guaranteed every track would ship in Dolby Atmos, arguing fans deserved future-proof fidelity. Executives sighed at the extra cost. Gabriel simply scheduled more tour dates to finance it himself. The message hasn't changed since the 70s. If the balance sheet strangles the art, he'll tear up the spreadsheet. Artists might clash over style, but the next feud cut deeper. Phil Collins turning Genesis into a pop juggernaut that dwarfed Gabriel's avant-garde crusade. Phil Collins, pop thundercloud over an art rock horizon. Peter Gabriel left Genesis convinced the band would either evolve into something unrecognizably new or quietly fade. Instead, Phil Collins stepped to the mic and, with gated reverb drums and radio-ready hooks, turned the group into a chart-crushing juggernaut. From the moment Follow You Follow Me hit top 40, Gabriel felt an earthquake in his rearview mirror. His former drummer was now the global face of a sound he'd never endorse. Backstage at a 1981 awards show, a reporter asked Peter if he missed fronting Genesis. He smiled. "I miss the experiments. I don't miss the wallpaper." Translation: Phil's new direction sounded pleasant enough to decorate a dentist's office. Collins, meanwhile, told magazines he was simply writing songs. People can whistle on the way to work. Gabriel bristled. Art wasn't something you hummed casually. It was something that unsettled you. As Invisible Touch conquered American airwaves, Gabriel released the dense polyrhythmic Security and watched critics frame every review as a sibling rivalry, avant-garde hermit versus arena pop monarch. When both men earned Oscar nominations in 1999, Phil for Tarzan, Peter for Rabbit-Proof Fence, seating charts kept them rows apart. Polite nods, zero conversation. The coldness reached its most public moment at Genesis's 2010 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. Gabriel skipped rehearsal, flew in late, delivered a cordial speech, and exited before the after-party where Collins planned to jam. Interviewed later, Peter quipped, "I'm happy for their success. It freed me to fail more interestingly." Collins shot back in his memoir that Some people confuse complexity with depth. Neither statement was a direct insult, yet each dripped with the same verdict. We measure music by different thermometers. Today, they trade curt emails about charity compilations. A joint project remains unlikely. To Gabriel, Collins proved that mass appeal can eclipse adventurous roots. To Collins, Gabriel proved that chasing the fringe means accepting smaller crowds. Their standoff crystallizes the core question every artist must face: move the mass or move the margins. Next, Gabriel collides with another global activist, Sting, whose own world music passport felt, to Peter, uncomfortably like borrowing without belonging. Sting. World music passport or cultural pickpocket? By 1986, Peter Gabriel had spent years in dusty border towns and back alley studios, recording with Senegalese sabar drummers, Hindustani violinists, and field choirs most labels couldn't pronounce. Then Sting, fresh off the Police's stadium farewell, arrived with a tan pura, and nothing like the sun. Critics hailed him as rock's new global conscience. Gabriel flinched. To him, world music wasn't a spice rack you sprinkled on pop. It was a decades-long apprenticeship. Studio calendars became chessboards. At Air Studios Montserrat, Gabriel's team booked Malian kora master Toumani Diabaté for 3 nights. Sting's manager rang hours later, offering double the fee for the same slot. Diabaté chose loyalty. Gabriel quietly paid him triple. Word leaked, fueling headlines of a human rights rock rivalry. When Amnesty International planned the 1988 Human Rights Now tour, organizers thought pairing the two icons would signal unity. Backstage reality? Separate buses, separate sound checks, and a shared set list negotiated down to one token duet, Biko, that ended with Sting exiting before the final chant. Gabriel's grudge wasn't jealousy, it was methodology. He'd spend weeks learning indigenous scales, while Sting dropped in for a weekend and flew out with hit single seed money. At a London charity gala, Peter allegedly told a friend, "Musical tourism gets applause. Musical pilgrimage gets blisters." Sting, asked later, countered, "Exposure helps everyone. Music isn't a gated community." Each saw the other as missing the point. Gabriel thought context mattered more than chart traction. Sting thought amplification mattered more than purist credentials. 30 years on, the detente is polite but cool. They'll share fundraiser posters, yet time arrivals, so red carpet overlaps last seconds. Gabriel still curates WOMAD with forensic cultural detail. Sting headlines yoga retreats with a frame drum. And fans still ask, whose approach truly honors global roots? Gabriel's answer lives in his painstaking liner notes. Sting's lives in his streaming numbers. Gabriel's fiercest rivalry, though, was reserved for the shape-shifting chameleon who kept outrunning him at art rock reinvention, David Bowie. That cosmic duel lands next. David Bowie, the eternal chameleon. He couldn't outmorph. If Peter Gabriel's career is a relentless ascent toward artistic peaks, David Bowie was the figure who always seemed to plant a new flag just minutes earlier. Their rivalry ignited in 1972 when Genesis and Ziggy Stardust were jostling for the same British music press ink. Gabriel's fox-headed theatrics predated Bowie's Diamond Dogs dystopia, yet reviewers crowned Bowie the supreme rock dramatist. Peter seethed privately, "I'm staging mythology, he's staging fashion." The duel escalated through the 70s. Gabriel unveiled The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, a sprawling concept opera, only to watch Bowie drop station to station and reroute the zeitgeist. Bowie decamped to Berlin, fusing krautrock and ambient before Gabriel could book his first sessions with Eno. Studio insiders recall Peter pinning Bowie's low review on a control room corkboard, scribbling, "trend-chasing or path-making." Determined to leapfrog, Gabriel built real-world studios and immersed himself in world rhythms, yet Bowie's Let's Dance rocketed to MTV superstardom, proving reinvention could still dominate pop. Their creative cat and mouse spilled into the visual arts. Gabriel hired Avant director Stephen R. Johnson for the claymation blast Sledgehammer. Bowie counters a year later with the labyrinthine Glass Spider tour and the boundary-bending Black Tie White Noise videos. Producers who worked with both recalled diary gymnastics. Peter booked Monday, Wednesday. Bowie pounced Thursday, Saturday, chasing the freshest tech toys. A polite handshake masked decades of chess moves, poaching the same digital animators, vying for the same Fairlight programmers, each scanning the other's set lists for hints of next phase evolution. Gabriel's rare slip came during a French interview in 1989. Some artists try on skins the way others change coats. Everyone knew the target. Bowie, wry as ever, later told Q magazine, "Costumes aside, the tune's what matters." Translation: thanks for the compliment. When Bowie passed in 2016, Gabriel penned a heartfelt tribute, calling him a lighthouse for the rest of us. Yet friends say Peter framed Bowie's final album, Black Star, in his study, a reminder that the chameleon stayed one shade ahead to the very end. Rivalry or not, Gabriel measured himself against Bowie's silhouette his entire career, and the shadow only sharpened his own pursuit of artistic absolutism. 6 collisions, 1 through line. Peter Gabriel will crash every bridge before he lets another hand steer his compass. From Tony Banks's Baroque keyboards to Bowie's ever-mutating mystique, each rival exposed the same pressure point: Gabriel's refusal to trade raw vision for shared custody. The result? Some of the boldest records in prog history, and an industry Rolodex filled with frosty pauses. What do these feuds teach? First, perfectionism is pricey. Gabriel bought freedom with fractured friendships and delayed releases. Second, genre trailblazers rarely share lanes. When collaborators chased charts, Rutherford Collins, or executives chased spreadsheets, Gabriel simply built a new road. Third, innovation invites imitation. His clashes with Sting and Bowie prove that even pioneers fear being out-pioneered. Was he guarding art or guarding ego? Drop your verdict below, and if unpacking musical crossfire fuels you, hit subscribe. Next episode, we flip the coin with 5 artists who survived the Gabriel gauntlet, and why he still calls them family. Don't miss the next deep dive.